All right, let's dive right in, folks. Today, we're going to tackle a real head-scratcher in baseball history.
Ooh, sounds intriguing.
Yeah, we're talking about Roger Connor.
Hmm, I'm not familiar with that name.
And that's exactly the point. This guy was the home run king before Babe Ruth, but hardly anyone remembers him.
Wow, really? That's wild.
I know, right? So we're going to dig into some old baseball records. They're called baseball.txt, I think, and see if we can figure out why he's been practically erased from the record books.
Okay, so where do we even start with a mystery like this?
Well, first we got to understand the era he played in, right? We're talking late 1800s baseball.
Oh, wow. So completely different game than what we know today.
Totally. No set rules, no leagues like we have now. It was like the Wild West of baseball.
I can only imagine. So tell me about this Roger Connor guy. How does he fit into all of this?
So Connor was born in 1857, right when baseball was just starting to take shape. He made his major league debut in 1880 with the Troy Trojans.
Trojans, huh? Interesting. What was he known for? What kind of player was he?
Well, he was a powerhouse at the plate, obviously, but he was also a really solid first baseman, a real all-around talent.
Okay, so he was good, but home run king good. Back then, home runs must have been pretty rare, right?
You got it. Connor racked up 138 home runs over his entire career.
138. That's a good number for sure, but
You got to remember, back then, most players hit less than 10 home runs in their entire careers.
oh wow, okay, that puts things in perspective. So he held the record for a while then.
Over 20 years.
No kidding.
So yeah, he was kind of a big deal.
It sounds like it. But it's funny though, you mentioned his power butt.
Yeah.
138 home runs, was that all he was known for? Or was he a good all-around hitter too?
Oh, he was definitely well-rounded. His career batting average was .316.
Wow, .316. That's not just slugging, that's consistent hitting.
Exactly. And you know what else?
What?
He played for the New York Giants, earned the nickname the Giant of New York.
Ooh, I like that.
And get this.
There's more.
He's credited with hitting the first ever Grand Slam.
Wait, seriously? The first Grand Slam?
Back in 1881.
That's incredible. But, okay, I gotta ask. If he was such a dominant player, like you're describing, why isn't his name as big as Babe Ruth's?
That's the million-dollar question. And it really is a mystery. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
There was no TV back then, no internet, barely even newspapers.
Ah, so no one really knew about him outside of the people who saw him play live.
Exactly. His story just never got told on a large scale.
Makes sense. It's almost like he was playing in a media black hole.
And then, bam, Babe Ruth busts onto the scene and everything changes.
Yeah, Ruth was a whole different animal.
Yeah.
He was made for the spotlight.
Right, charismatic, controversial, all that. Perfect for the way media was starting to cover baseball.
So you're saying it was more about the times than the talent?
It definitely makes you think, right? If Connor had played in today's world with cameras and social media and everything.
Who knows how big he could have been?
Right. Would we even be having this conversation? Would he be a household name?
That's a good question. I guess we'll never know for sure.
But hey, that's what makes this whole thing so interesting. We're diving into a forgotten part of baseball history and trying to piece together the story of a guy who honestly deserves way more recognition.
Absolutely. So what else do we know about him? What other clues can we uncover?
Well, let's take a quick break and we'll dig into some more of these old records when we come back. I'm sure there's more to this story than meets the eye.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this whole what-if scenario we talked about before.
Oh, yeah.
What if Connor had been playing today with all the fancy training and the media hype and all that?
Right. Could you imagine, Connor with a personal trainer and a nutritionist and all the analytics they use now?
Seriously.
Yeah.
This guy was already hitting bombs when baseball was still figuring itself out.
It's mind-blowing, honestly.
Imagine the home runs he could have hit with today's technology. I bet he'd be launching them out of the park left and right. Definitely. And the media. Oh, man, the media would be going crazy for him.
The Giant of New York. Trending on Twitter every time he stepped up to the plate.
Endorsement deals, commercials, the whole 9 yards. He would have been huge.
It makes you think, right? Talent is one thing, but getting that media attention is a whole other ball game.
Totally. How many other amazing athletes have we forgotten about just because they didn't get the spotlight?
Exactly. It's a real shame when you think about it.
It's like history is written by the winners, or at least the ones who get the most attention.
Sad but true. But hey, Connor's story is a good reminder to dig a little deeper, you know?
I hear you. There's got to be more to it than just the stats and the highlights.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of history and finding this whole other world of baseball.
And Connor was right there in the middle of it, pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
Absolutely. I mean, we take home runs for granted now, but back then it was a whole different story.
He was a real pioneer, you know?
Mm.
He helped shape the game into what it is today.
And it's funny because his legacy is so quiet compared to guys like Babe Ruth, but it's just as important.
Totally agree. Every power hitter who steps up to the plate today owes something to Roger Connor.
He might not have had the fame, but he had the talent and the impact.
And that's what really matters at the end of the day.
You know, I came into this deep dive wondering why Connor was forgotten, but now I'm just amazed by what he accomplished.
Me too. He's like a hidden treasure of baseball history.
I'm starting to realize that baseball is full of these hidden stories.
Oh, absolutely. You just got to know where to look.
Well, that's what we're doing here, right?
Exactly. Unearthing the forgotten stories, the ones that don't always make the headlines.
I'm starting to think this is more than just a deep dive into Roger Connor.
What do you mean?
It's like a whole new way of looking at baseball history, understanding that there's so much more to it than we see on the surface.
I like that. A deeper dive into the heart of the game.
And you never know what amazing stories we might find along the way. It's kind of funny, you know? We started out wanting to figure out why no one remembers Roger Connor,
Yeah.
but I almost feel like we've stumbled onto something bigger here.
What do you mean?
It's not just about Connor, it's about how we decide who's great, you know, who we remember, and how much the media plays into all of that.
Yeah, that's true. It's easy to just focus on the big names, the guys we see on TV all the time,
But Connor's story makes you realize there's a whole bunch of amazing athletes we've probably never even heard of.
just because they played in a different time
Yeah.
before all the cameras and social media.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, are there players today who are going to be forgotten in the future?
Because they didn't have millions of followers or whatever.
Exactly. It's like, what if talent isn't always enough? What if you need that media push too?
Huh. That's a good point.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you want to go digging for those hidden stories, you know?
Yeah, look beyond the obvious stuff.
Exactly. Find the players who maybe didn't get the recognition they deserved.
Well, that's kind of what we did with Connor, right? We shined a little light on a forgotten corner of baseball history.
And I think that's a great thing to do. I mean, history is full of these untold stories.
It's our job to go find them, I guess.
I like that. It's like being a detective, but for baseball.
And who knows, maybe we'll inspire someone else to do some digging of their own.
Exactly.
So I guess the lesson here is to always be curious, right?
Yeah. Always be on the lookout for those hidden gems.
Don't just accept the official version of history.
There's always more to the story.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Big thanks to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Roger Connor, baseball's forgotten home run king.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
And remember, keep digging, keep discovering, and never stop exploring the fascinating world of baseball history. Who knows what you might find?